Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Decryption and I hope you are well. Galleries are a big part of a lot of games where you can go and view behind the scenes images of your game, concept art from it, or many other different photos taken by the developers for you to unlock in the game. They give the player a sense of progression, so the more they go through the game, the more they unlock, the more gallery photos or objects or audiobooks you can unlock in order to display it to the player. So in this tutorial, we're going to look at adding a really basic gallery based on the one from Batman Arkham City, where you can see the gallery and then you can see what's locked images, then you can see unlocked images, and you can go across, find the image you want, open it up to see it in full screen, go back and then continue looking around. So let's get started. So the first thing you're going to need, as you can imagine, is images for your gallery. So I have a bunch of gallery pictures here. So I have all sorts of little just pictures I've basically took around the scene. I don't know, let's say we look at the rims of the twins' car. As you can see, it's a nice little gallery image you could see. Yes, you could walk around and see it, but you know, if you get a good artist, then you can make it look really, really good. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back into my main menu level here. So my main menu is utterly empty. All I have is a custom game mode for my main menu. It's got no player on it or barely anything. I load it, all I get is a button. That's it. If I click the button, it goes into the game. So I'm going to add a new button under here, which will say gallery. When you click it, it'll show the gallery on top. Then we'll load through the images and do what we need. So I'm going to load up my main menu here. So I'm going to start by adding my new button into here. So I'll just duplicate this quick button here and I will say BTN gallery. And I'll change the text just to say gallery as well. And I'm going to move both of these buttons inside a vertical box just so they're aligned properly, and then we can just center align this vertical box and size to content. And then finally adding some padding to the gallery just to make it a little bit different. There we go, so my main menu's been improved dramatically already. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come and cut this vertical box I have, and I'm going to add in a widget switcher. Now if you've seen my phone series, you know I'm a fan of the widget switcher. The widget switcher basically allows you to switch widgets really easily in and out. So I'm going to call this first widget BB main menu buttons. And I'm just going to center align this one because that's how I want it to look like so. So that's the first basic main menu we've got set up. So now I'm going to come in and I'm going to create a new folder inside my content drawer called widgets. And this is where we're going to create our gallery screen and then just import it, just so we're not all working in one location. And it also means an artist can work on your gallery while somebody else is working on your main menu, etc, etc. So I'm going to create a new widget blueprint, and I'll call it WBC for widget blueprint component. I always append a C to it, just so I know it's not meant to be spawned in the world on its own, and I'll call it gallery. So in here, I'm going to come and drop a canvas panel because that's the first thing I'll do. And then we can start populating it based on the Batman one here. So he's got some text up above and he shows what page number you're on and then the name of the item. Now, I'm not going to copy it like for like because I don't have half the assets I need. But I'm going to come and drag in some text inside my canvas panel. And this will be TXT screen name. And I will call this gallery. Just so you know where you are. That's pretty much the point of it. And I'm going to keep this anchored at the top here, but I'm actually going to move it away by 200 in both directions, just so it's there. That means if you rescale your screen, it will try to stay at the top there. I'll keep my font at 24 and bold because it's the main thing. I'm going to set the transform policy to upper so it's in capitals like so. Next, I'm going to duplicate this and I'll put TXT page number. Next, I'm going to come and add in a horizontal box just below this. And I'll call this HB page details. Inside here, I'm going to paste two text blocks. The first one I'm going to call TXT page, and the second one I'll call TXT page number. The page will simply just say page, and then the number will be whatever number we're on. So I'm going to set the 1 for now. And now you can see, because we've added the horizontal box, they're nicely aligned next to each other. So after this page, I'll just do a colon and a space. There we go. So with this horizontal box here, I'm going to tick size to content, and then I'm just going to move it roughly below my gallery. But I know I want to tie these gallery and this page number together, so I'm actually going to come and cut them again. I'm going to come and get a vertical box, and I'm going to paste them both in. This is so we can actually keep them tied together. So if I tick size to content, I no longer need to move the gallery on its own and remember the numbers. I can move them both at the same time. So it was 200, 200 before, but as you can see, now they're both tied together, which is exactly what we want. I can add some more padding to my page numbers just to separate them off a little bit. There we are. But I'm actually going to come and reduce the size of these page number ones because they don't need to be as big. So I'm going to set it to 20-ish. And I'm not going to make it bold, I'll make it regular. And then finally, I'm going to duplicate one more text and just make sure it's at the bottom. And I'll call this txt image name. I'm going to just put a fake image name in for now called Halloween Player Face. I'm going to keep it as bold, but I am going to reduce the size of it. So I'm going to say it's more 18-ish. And then I'll just give it some padding as well. There we are. Yes. So when you first come in, you'll see that it says gallery, which I'm going to actually increase to 30. You'll see it says gallery, it says what page number you're on, and then it says Halloween Player Face, which will be the name of the image. So next we need to actually start work on the actual gallery in the center. So underneath this canvas panel, I'm actually going to come and add in a grid view. So I'm going to come and set my position Y to 100, my size X to 1000, and my size Y to 600, because I think that gives me a nice little grid in the middle. I've also moved my vertical box up just by 150 on the position Y, just so it's not conflicting. And that gives us a nice little grid panel in order to start building our gallery up. So I'm going to come and create yet another widget because we need these images here to not only be buttons that render with an image, but it also needs to be clickable. And while we could build it into here, there'd be a lot of duplication. We don't want that. So I'm going to come into my content drawer widgets and I'm going to create another widget blueprint. And I'll call this WBC Gallery Button. And I'm going to open this up. So I know each one of these will be a button, so I can come and add this button in like so. And then I know it's going to contain an image, so I can add the image in. There we go. For the button, I don't necessarily want the grey background on it. I think that's not the style I'm going for. So I'm actually going to come and turn the tint down to 0 on the alpha for the normal. For the hovered, I'm going to keep it, but I'm going to actually rotate it down to something like 0.2, so you can see when you've hovered over it. And I'm actually going to change it to none, so it just colours itself in. For the pressed, I'm going to do the same thing, so I'll change it to 0.6, so it's slightly darker. And again, I'm going to come and change it to none. For disabled, I'm just going to set the tint to be 0.1, just so it's ever so slight. And now I can come back to my image, and I'm going to make it full width all the way around, and I'm going to remove any padding from it. So it looks a bit of a mess at the moment, but if I come and add in one of my gallery images, so say Carlos's cut, there we go. So you can see roughly it's starting to take shape. So this is what our button's going to look like. And when it's a locked button, then I'm going to show the locked texture like this. But our uniform grid will keep this in the exact correct size. So if I compile and save and jump back to the gallery now, if I come in and add in our new WBC gallery button inside the grid panel, you can see it's the correct size like so. And if I come and change it back to an image, you can see it renders the image like so. So let's start making our actual gallery button clickable, and then we can work on the art afterwards when we have functionality. So I'm going to come into the gallery buttons graph here, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to create an event dispatcher called onClicked. And then all this is going to do is return the button. So I'll just call it button, and it will be a type of itself. Because then whenever we click it, whatever binds to this event dispatcher can get the button and get all the details it needs. So we don't need an event tick. And on pre-construct and construct, I'm actually going to start building the button up. So I'm going to come and rename the image to something useful, such as img thumbnail. And then I'm going to come and drag it in here. I'm going to drag off and do set brush from soft texture. Make sure you click soft texture because it's more memory efficient and we don't have to worry about it taking up memory when it's not in use. And I'll just format it something like that, so the pre-construct will run whenever we hit compile, and the construct will run every time the game runs. So the pre-construct is very useful for debugging it and developing it. For the soft texture, I'm going to drag off and promote it to a variable, and I will call it thumbnail image. On this thumbnail image, I'm going to tick instance editable and expose on spawn. This will mean when we spawn this gallery button, we can instantly tell it what the thumbnail image is. I'm also going to duplicate this and just call it actual image. So as we generate all these buttons, each button will store a reference to the thumbnail it needs to show, and then also the actual image it needs to show when you click it, making it a lot easier to seamlessly run through. The next thing we need to do is we actually need to store the name of it. So I'm going to add another variable and I'll just call it image name, and I will make this a type of text. And then again, I'll make it instance editable and expose on spawn and just make sure all these three variables are. Next, I'm going to come back to the button and I'm going to scroll all the way down and I'm going to add a on clicked event. And then when it's clicked, I'm literally just going to drag on my event dispatcher and call on clicked. For the button, I'm just going to drag off and do self. And I'm going to hit compile and save. So now if we come back to our gallery, you can see we have our button there. But we actually need to start spawning the images in the gallery. And then once we spawn them, we can work on the click event in order to show the image on large screen. I'm going to keep this gallery button here and we'll clear it out dynamically just so we've got it for ease of use and dev. I'm going to make sure that my txt image name is marked as a variable. My page number is marked as a variable. And my grid panel is renamed to something more appropriate, so GP gallery, and I'll make sure that's a variable as well. Now I'm going to jump into the graph here. I'm going to delete the event tick because we don't need it. And I'm going to delete the pre-construct because we don't need it either. And on the construct, this is where we can start loading the images. So I'm going to come and create a new function here called load images on page. So now we need to actually start looping through all of our images. So this is where we come and build up a data structure to store all the different images you want, how you unlock them, what their name and details are and stuff like that. Now for my gallery unlocking and my image unlocking, I am going to be using the narrative plugin. However, you can do this completely without the narrative plugin and just make all the gallery images show, or you can link it into your own quest system. The gallery I'm going for will have all the images locked by default, and you will unlock them by completing certain quests and tasks and such like. So I'm going to come up to my data folder inside my blueprints data, and we need to create a new data table to store all of the gallery that we need, and it'll store all of the tasks that you need to unlock them, but it won't store the unlocked status. It will just store the images. The unlocked status will come later. So inside my structs folder here, I'm actually going to come and create a new blueprint structure, and I'll call it s_gallery image. I'm going to open this up. So now we need to add all the variables that we need to store for the gallery. So the first thing I'm going to do is image name. I'll set this to a type of text. The next thing I will store is thumbnail image, and this will be a type of texture 2D, but make sure you hover over it and choose soft object reference, because we don't want to keep it in memory every time we load the data table. We just want to keep a soft object reference to it so we can load it as and when we need to. Because if you have hundreds of thumbnails, you don't want them all loaded in memory at once. I'm going to add another variable just below this, and of course if you want to add 3D models, you can also put a link to the static mesh or anything like that you want. I'm not going to go that far just yet on mine. If you would like to see that, please leave a comment below and we can add to it in another tutorial. Next, I'm going to add a new one, and this is where it becomes narrative specific, but you can add whatever you want in, and I'm going to call it task name to unlock. And I'm going to set this to a type of name. And what this is going to be is the actual name of the image that I need to unlock in narrative in order to display this image. So for me, I'm going to come into my narrative folder, I'm going to come into my blueprints and into my data tasks, and I'm actually just going to create a new data task, just while we're here, called DT gallery unlock image. And then I can open it up and I can just clear all the DTs off because we don't need it, like so. And all this is going to be is it'll pass in an image name. So for instance, if I come here and do get narrative component, if I come and do complete narrative data task, the task I can come and set to my gallery unlock image, and this image name here will be this name here in order to unlock it. The way I'm going to be treating it, if it's blank, it's automatically unlocked anyway. But one key thing I've just noticed is it is actually a string, so we'll just change it to that like so. And that's all I'm going to do. If you want to add anything else, you can. This is the moment for it. But again, if you're not using narrative, you don't have to do the task name. It's just part of the tutorial. So now I can come back to my data folder and I can create a new data table. So miscellaneous data table. And it'll ask me to pick my structure, which will be my s_gallery image. And I'll click OK. Now I'll name it DT gallery images. And I can open this up. This is where I start populating it with all my images. I'll do a few just to show you how to do it, and then I'll run through it off camera just to speed it up. So I'm going to come and add a new row here. And for this first one, what's the first image we're going to do? Carlos's car. So I'm going to just set this row name just to be something unique, Carlos's car. And then down at the bottom here, image name will be Carlos's car. And this is what's actually shown to the user. So call it whatever you want. The thumbnail image, I don't have thumbnail images for mine yet. So I am just going to set them both to the same. But having it there means you can load lower quality images, which will be a lot less memory intensive. So for example, my images are 2080 by 1245. They're absolutely huge images. We don't want to load 20 of these in memory all at once. It's not going to be very efficient at all. But a thumbnail of, say, the tyre or the front would work absolutely perfectly. As you can see on Batman Arkham, we're setting it to really small size, really lightweight. And then for task name to unlock, I'm just going to literally call mine Carlos's car, just like so. And you can call it anything you want. So just one more time, we'll click add at the top. I'll get the next image. For me, will be doc scene. The image name will be doc scene. I will click the image and then just click the two imports for me because I've got the same one. And the task name, I'll just call it doc scene. And now I'm going to run through and do the rest. There we go. So I've run through and added all my gallery images into it, as you can see. Some of them I've changed the name of. So like Tyler's muscle car is completely different to Tyler's Charger, and the Nakamura twins ride, it's completely okay. That's what I wanted. You'll notice that on the player on car, I've left this as blank. So this one is just automatically unlocked, which I think will be a nice touch. And then I've also added my festive versions, so my Halloween Lily and Pumpkin player versions here, which you'll only be able to get from an exclusive unlock, which is what we will control with the task name here. Now, if we save and compile that, we can jump back to our gallery here, and this is where we start looping through all those images and loading it. So I'm going to drag off from here and do get data table row names. And in the table, I'm going to select our gallery itself. So I'm going to drag out from the out row names. I'm going to add a for each loop with a break. And I'm going to connect it up to there like so. So now that we have our data row key name here, I'm going to drag off from here and just do get data table row. And then you'll see it's automatically added it in. And then it'll just ask us to add in the table, which will be our same data table gallery images. And now from the out row, we can drag off and just do break, and you'll see we now have access to all of the variables inside of it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag from the task name to unlock, and I'm going to ask if it's empty. Because if it's empty, there's no point checking it. We can just skip it and go straight to the creation. So I'll hold B and add a condition and connect it up. Like so. If it's empty, then it'll just go straight on, and we'll drag off from the true and do create widget, like so. From the class, I'll set it to our gallery button, and then you'll see it's asking for all the little details we need, such as the image name, the thumbnail, and the actual image, like so. And with a little bit of tidying up, you can make it look neater. If you want to reorder the properties as well, which I know I want to, I'm just going to come back to the gallery image, and I'm literally just going to reorder the properties by dragging them up. And then when I compile and save, you can see if I come back to the gallery, right click refresh, it's moved it up, it looks a lot neater. There we go. And then after that, we can work on actually rendering it to the page. But if it's false, this is where we need to come and check if we've actually unlocked it first. So I'm going to right click and do get narrative component, and this is the narrative specific one again. If you're not using narrative, do your own checks to see if you've unlocked it. And from here, I'm going to do has completed task. There we go. If you wanted to be extra specific, you could also do has completed task in quest and specify a quest that they must have finished. And you can also drag off, if you don't want to do an individual task, you can just do is quest succeeded and pass in your quest, and then you can specifically just say has this quest been completed. You don't need a specific task, but I'm just going to stick with the tasks. For the task, I'm going to set my gallery unlock image, and then the task name to unlock, I'm going to drag into the name like so. Now I don't really care how many times it's been completed, 1 will be enough to unlock it. And then if it's true, then I can connect it to the false, and then I can connect the true to there. However, if it's false because you've not unlocked it, then instead we actually need to render a locked version of the image. So I can drop this down here like so and connect it to the false, and then this is where I can populate it. So the image name, I'll just be cryptic and do question mark, question mark, question mark. For the thumbnail image, I'm going to search for my locked icon, and then I will do the same because I don't have anything else for the actual image like so. So now we have the unlocked version where it will render all the details, and then the check, and then the locked version here. Now we can deal with actually adding the gallery images to the screen. So I'm going to create a local variable here, and I'm going to call it current gallery button. And I'm going to set it to a type of gallery button, just so we can use it in multiple places. I'm going to populate the return value on each one here. And the reason I'm doing this is it allows us to simplify the code by combining the addition into one place. So I'm going to drag in our grid panel gallery here, and I'm going to drag off and do add child, and make sure you click to grid. So you could get very fancy in your data table if you wanted, and you could specifically say which column and which row you wanted the images in, which would be great if you've got some DLC and you could put page numbers in there. That's fine. I'm just going to do mine in order of here because it seems easier. So now that we've done this, it will come in and ask us which content we want to add, and we already know it's our current gallery button here. And then with a little bit of tidying up, we can make it actually look semi-usable. Like you can see, there we go. And now we need an in row and an in column. So this is specifically columns going across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and rows going 1, 2, 3, 4. So we need to specifically tell it start at 0, 0 for the 0 column and then the 0 row. And then on row 0, it will be column 1, 2, 3. And when it gets to the end, it needs to go to the next row. So this is actually really easy to do. So I'm actually going to come and create a local variable here called current row. And I'm going to set it to a type of integer. And I'm actually going to duplicate this and call it current column. And I'm going to drag the current row into here and plug it in, and the current column like so. So every time it renders an image, it's going to get the current row and column and set it into there. Now, if we run it as is, all the images will just pile on top of each other, which is not what we want. So after this, we know we've just spawned one. We can come and actually increment the column. So I'm going to increment int, and the cool thing about the increment is it automatically sets itself back. So you don't need to put a set afterwards. It's like a little cheat. So that'll set the current column. And then it'll keep ticking up 1, 2, 3, 4 until it gets to the very end. So now I'm going to drag off of here and do more. And I'm going to do an equals equals. And I'm going to say, if this column equals 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so if it equals 5 as soon as it's done, we know it needs to go to the next line. So I'm going to say if it equals 5, I'm going to add a branch and connect it up. Then we know we need to go to the next row. So I'm going to drag the current row in and do increment int and set it there. However, now that we've moved rows, we need to tell the columns to go back to 0 again. So I'm going to drag the current column in, holding the Alt key just to set it back to 0 like so. So I'm going to come and comment all of this here actually and go add gallery image to the grid panel. Just so when we first come into this method, we know what all this chunk of code does. We can say this adds it to the grid panel. We can skip this. That's not what we need. It's a lot easier. This bit in the middle will check unlock status of image. And this bit here will create the image button. There we go. So we've still got plenty more to do at the moment, but for now, this is a good start. So if I come back to my main menu here, and then click on my gallery, I'm going to come down and add a click event here, because we need to actually tell it when you go to the gallery, show the gallery. And all I'm going to do is drag in our widget switcher and just set active widget index, and I'm going to set it to number 1 because I know that's what order it's in. And the way you figure the order out is if you go to the designer, if you close everything inside your widget switcher, it starts at 0. So this main menu buttons is 0. So if I come and add in our new gallery, it will be index 1, which will look like so. So if we compile and save, and if we try now and see what we've got, so we can see we've got it normal. If I click gallery, boom, nothing happens. And that is because back on the event graph, we haven't told it to load the images on the page like so. So I'm going to compile and save, and I'm going to jump back to the main menu. So when we click gallery, you'll see, there we go. So all my images are loading, kind of. We've got a few bugs. For example, I'm getting spammed with errors, which we'll resolve in a moment. But you can also see the old one is still remaining. And we can't do anything. But as a first step progress, the gallery is taking shape very nicely. You can see it automatically ends because we've run out of images, which is very cool. So let's go and fix some bugs. So the first bug was that it wasn't clearing the existing images. So I'm going to come right to the beginning on load images on page. And I'm going to drag it across and drag in my grid panel and then just do clear children, which will clear out everything what's already in it. So that'll remove the very last image. The next bug was I was getting spammed with errors. Now these are specifically narrative errors. So we can fix these. So if you are using narrative, you just need to find somewhere to place your narrative component. So for me, I'm going to come into my blueprints and I'm going to create a new folder called controllers. And I'm just going to create myself a really basic player controller that has no other functionality. So I'll call it BP player controller main menu. And I'm going to open this up and I'm going to simply add the narrative component to it. And the reason I'm not using my main player controller is because I've got all sorts of other functionality to run the player. We don't need that on the main menu. In my game mode here for my main menu, I'm just going to come and set the default player controller class to my main menu version like so. Now if I open it up and then I click gallery, you see it does the same thing, but it's at least this time it's not erroring and it's actually checking if we've completed tasks. And you can see the other bug has also resolved itself. Now as a test, let's make it actually complete a task and then check it. So back at the gallery here, I'll go back to my event graph. I'll drag this off a little bit. I'll right click, get narrative component, and I will just say complete narrative data task. I'll plug it in both sides. And then for the task, I will say gallery image unlock. And for the image, I will say we'll do Tyler's charger. So if I paste this in here, in theory, as soon as this now loads, it will complete the narrative data task and then try to load the images, which should show Carlos's car. So in theory, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. There is the proof of concept already. We have now got 2 images, the first default one and then Tyler's one because we've just unlocked it, which can be done via request or anything else. So let's crack on making the actual click events so we can actually click and view the images because at the moment we can't see them. So I'm going to come and remove this narrative task because we don't actually want it to do it there. And I'll open up this load images on page. So when we create these buttons, we actually gave them an event dispatcher, which means when they're clicked, we can get a hold of the object and we know what's clicked. So I'm going to come all the way to the end here after it's sorted all of the paging stuff out. And I'm going to drag in the current gallery button. And then I'm going to drag off it and do bind on clicked here, which is this bind event is the one we've created earlier. For the event, I'm going to drag off and I'm going to tell it to create the custom event itself and then click create matching event. It will paste it inside your function. I don't like it there, so I'm going to paste it out like so. It'll ask me to rename it, so I will call it gallery image button clicked. It's a mouthful, but at least you know exactly what it does. And then right at the end, it will error again. So make sure you come and select the correct one, like so. And now this will tell us every time we click the button. So we can come back to our event graph here, and from this button, I can drag off and I can do get actual image. And I can do get name, which will get me the image name like so. So now that we have the gallery image, this is where we can actually switch to a new widget to actually show the image on top. So I'm going to come to my canvas panel and I'm going to cut it and I'm going to add another widget switcher in because it's pointless us going all the way back to the main menu in order to render an image which is solely for the gallery. So I'm going to do it inside the gallery. So we've got a widget switcher within a widget switcher, but that's completely fine. This widget switcher I'll call WS gallery controller. And I'll paste it in. The benefit of doing it with a widget switcher in here, it also gives you the flexibility to advance to audio logs or 3D models and stuff like that. I'll rename my canvas panel to CP gallery menu. And this is where we add the next image on top where we actually want to render the image. So I'm going to come in, add an overlay in. And then all I'm simply going to do is add in an image. And I'm going to make it almost full screen, but I'll probably just set the padding of the bottom to be something like 50 to 150, and then just under here I will add the text and I will put it at the bottom full width. So I'm going to come in and add a vertical box in and I'll call this VB gallery image, and then I will first add an image in because this will be what will render our actual image. IMG selected image, and I will set this to be fill. Fill means it will take up as much space as it can take, which is fine. To get rid of the horrible white eyesight, I'm actually going to come and just set a placeholder image. So I'll set it to the dock scene. There we go, that's a lot more pleasing to look at. And then just under this image, I'm actually going to come and add a text here so we can render the details of the image once you've clicked on it so you know what you're looking at. And I'll call this TXT image selected name. I'm going to center align it and I'm going to give it some padding just of 10 all the way around, and you can see it's pushing everything up like so. Now I can compile and save. I can make sure that these two are ticked as variables so we can edit it. And now using the widget switcher, we can simply switch to it and then set our correct image. So if I jump back to my graph now, I can take the TXT selected name and from the button drag off, do get name. And then from the TXT selected name, I can just drag off and do set text. Connect it up, and there's the first part of it done. The second part is that we need to actually set the image, which is the exact same concept of what we've just done. So I will drag out the IMG selected image, and this time I will do set brush from soft texture. I will connect it up, and then finally from the button I will do get actual image and connect it in like so. If you can't connect it in, make sure you've selected soft texture and make sure your actual image is type soft texture. Finally, the last thing we need to do is actually tell the widget to update and show us the correct screen. So I'm going to drag in the WS gallery controller and I will say set set active widget index, and I will set it to 1 because 0 will be our actual menu. Now if I compile and save and jump back in, we should be able to click the images. Nothing works, which is very odd, but the last one ironically does work. And this is just a little flaw in the logic. So in the gallery and the load images function, it's coming and checking if you've reached the end column and you need to go to the next row or not. If it's true, then it moves you across the column and goes to here. But if it's false, it doesn't do anything, and all you need to do is just connect it up here like so. So all you're basically saying is, I don't care if you're changing rows or not, you still need to just bind the click event like so. And then the next thing you'll have noticed is we can actually click in a disabled image, and we don't want that. So I'm actually going to come and drag all this stuff over like so, just to give us a bit of room, and I'm going to drag this across here. From this button, just after the set, I'm going to call the function setIsEnabled, and I'm actually going to keep it as unticked like so. And then I'm going to connect it up. For the true, you don't really need to do it because it's default enabled, but we can do it just to keep consistency, like so. And now what this is going to do is it should disable the actual widgets so you can't click them anymore unless you specifically unlocked them. So now if I come back and click gallery, you can see it's all disabled. I can't click them except the unlocked one, where it shows us the main player. How cool is that, ladies and gentlemen? We now have a semi-functional gallery page. So at the moment, we can't get back. We really should get back. And I don't like how it's absolute full screen. I want it to be a little bit compressed a little. So let's go back and actually fix some of these issues as well. So let's go back and fix some of these. So the first thing is I didn't like the size of the image. So let's go to the selected image like so. And I'm just going to get some padding of 50 all the way around, just so it's got a little border. But on the bottom, I'm actually going to set it to 0, just so it doesn't take up a lot of room. But on the text block, I can come and now set it to about 50, so the text block sits a bit higher. I'm also going to increase the size of the font because I thought it was far too small, so I'll say 30. Now we can compile and save that. Now we need a way to actually go back. So there are multiple ways you can do this, and loads of games work completely differently. On Batman Arkham, it looks like you have a button to just go back. You can click the image, or you can do all sorts like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to wrap the entire page in a button. So if you click it, it goes back. That's what I'm going to do for basics at the moment. So I'm going to select both my components, and I'm going to cut them, Control X. And I'm going to drag in the button, and then I'm going to make the button full screen and full width and fill. And then I'm going to set the draw as to none all the way across it because we don't need it to do anything. And then inside this button, I'm going to come and add a vertical box. Then I will set the vertical box to be full vertical, horizontal, and padding as none. And then I will paste it in. I'll just move the TXT to the bottom again, and then it looks completely normal, as you can see. The reason you have to add a vertical box is a button can only contain one child, which is not good when we've got two. So the vertical box just allows us to get around it. Now I'm going to rename my button to BTN Gallery Image Back, and I'll come down to the bottom and I'll just click Unclicked. So this is when we've clicked the actual gallery image. All we need to do is set our active widget index back to 0. That's all we need to do. So now if we come and try it again, we can click the gallery. I can see the images. Nothing will work. I'll click that image and go, yes, this looks cool. I'll click and it disappears. There we go. Nice and super basic. But one thing you will notice is the names not updating, and there's not having a selection box or anything like that. So we need to crack on with that so we can actually see what image we're hovering over, because it's a bit pointless you having to click on it and you see it. So I'm going to come back to my gallery button here. So on the button here, when we hover over it, it should be setting a tint around the button. So I'm going to grab the thumbnail and I'm actually going to give it a padding of 10 all the way around. So you can see the button has a gap now. And then on the hovered, I'm going to set it up from 0.2 to about 0.6. And then the disabled. So now that we've given the image a little bit of padding around the button, so you can see the button through it, I'm actually going to come to the button, and on the hovered, I'm going to set the draw as to image. And all this is going to do is actually tell it to render the hover, but as an image in the background. So as you can see, you can now hover over it and you know which one you've highlighted, which is better. We need the hover to actually trigger the name change like so. So I'm going to come back to the gallery here, and on the button down below, I'm just going to come and override the on hovered event here. And then just like we did for the click event, I'm going to go through and create an event dispatcher, bind to the event dispatcher, and then set the name. So I'm going to add a new event dispatcher called on hovered. And this again will take an input of the type of button, so you can see it's automatically done it. So I will call it button, and I will drag this on hovered out, hit call, connect it up, and connect the self node into it so it knows what's happened. Then I can compile compile and save, I can jump back to my gallery, and on the load images, on the bind event at the end, we can grab the gallery button and we can pretty much do this exact same cycle again. So I'm going to paste the current gallery button in. I'm going to bind event on hovered, and I'm going to create an event, and then I can connect this up and wrap it in a nice little comment. So hovered event. From the function, I will create a matching event. I will cut it onto my event graph just below my gallery button image clicked, and I will call it gallery image button hovered. And then all we need to do is we actually need to set the image name. So we can just connect it up and connect this up like so. And the final thing you need to do here is just to make sure you drag in the txt image name and connect it to the target. And then jumping back to the load images, we can come back to the hovered event at the end and just make sure we've selected hovered. So now when I hit compile and save, and if I open the main menu, you can see when I click the gallery, hovering over these won't do anything, but hovering over the image shows the image you've hovered over. If I click it, there we go. There is a super basic gallery. So now let's plug it in to some quests and such, so we can start actually loading it. So I'm going to come back into my main map, and this is where we start thinking on how we want to unlock all the different gallery images. So in my actual game, each one of these will eventually have a quest for you to do of some level. Maybe you'll help them, maybe you won't. For now, I just have the Nakamura Sisters quest where they want you to cheat. So I'm actually going to come to their quest inside my quest folder. Again, this is narrative specific. You can do this however you want. And I have Raceway Rivalry here, which is where they want to sabotage it. And on quest success, then I want to be able to complete the narrative data task. So I'm going to come and add an event of complete narrative data task. The task will be my gallery image unlock, and it will be the twins rims there. So I can paste it in. For Carlos, he requires you to pick up some car parts for him. So I will come to the quest state and I will do the exact same thing. I will add a complete narrative data task. It will be the type of gallery image unlock, and it will be Carlos's car, like so. So I can compile and save. And at the moment, you'll notice that no matter what I do, I won't unlock the gallery images, even when I quit the game. So if I was to run up and say, speak to Carlos, so he's saying he needs some car parts. So if I go and collect the tires, and then finally I can come and collect the turbocharger, it will tell me to go and speak to Tyler before the race starts. So I've got plenty of time to speak to him, and he'll say, here's the parts. And then it completes the narrative task. Okay, well, my game doesn't have a main menu at the moment, but that's fine. I've completed the task. So if I quit it and come back to the main menu, we've now completed Carlos's car part. If I start it, the gallery's still not unlocked it. Well, that's very odd. If you quit your console, you'd expect it to save it. So what we need to do is we actually need to tell narrative to save the current progress. If you're using something else, such as another quest provider, tell them to save it, or it might store it in the game instance, I don't know. But you need to find a way to transfer the data across. Now for narrative, this is really easy to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into my master quest here. And I'm actually going to add a new variable here called autosave on completion, because I want the option to be there. By default, I'll tick it to true, but it won't always be the case. And then you can see here, I've already got an on quest succeeded, but if you don't, just hit override and you'll be able to see on quest succeeded like I have here. So what mine does is it binds to when the player dies so I can show the correct state, but you might not want that. But what I am going to do is from the on quest succeeded, I'm actually going to tell narrative to save. And this will basically say, if we've told it to autosave after this quest is completed, save the progress in narrative. It will physically write the file to your computer, so you know you've unlocked the gallery images. So after this unbind event here, or on quest succeeded, I'm going to drag this branch off and I'm going to say, if we're auto-saving on completion, which we are, then I'm going to get my narrative component and then I'm going to call save. Now, if you've implemented save game names, so you can specifically name your save, plug it in here. At the moment, I haven't, so I'm not going to worry about it. And I'm going to simply wrap all this in a comment saying autosave after quest. And I can compile and save. And now all of my quests have nicely been updated like that. So if I go to class defaults, autosave on completion is ticked. So now that we've updated the quest to tell them to save, we actually need to tell narrative to reload it when we're on the main menu. So what I am going to do is I'm going to just add it to the level blueprint. So it physically doesn't spawn the main menu until the loading has been complete. So I'm just going to connect the load and connect narrative component just like that. Now the other way of doing this is to prevent the gallery from loading until we click the button. Now this is a good option, that is something we should look at, but if narrative takes 15 seconds to load for some reason, I can still click the gallery before it's loaded, which is a problem. So hence why I've gone for the main menu prevention, so it will physically wait for narrative to load and then load the menu. So if you're waiting for 15 seconds, in theory your loading screen should be there for 15 seconds. That's what I'm hoping. Now if we try it again and hit load map, this time let's do the Nakamura twins quest. So she wants us to sabotage, so we will sabotage their own car. There we are. So now if I come and tell them I have done it, and we lie and say, yes, we sabotaged Carlos's car, There we go, quest succeeded. But while we're here, let's also do Carlos's quest. So he wants us to get the tyres. So this time when I run up to Carlos and complete it, you'll see quest succeeded, nothing's changed. However, you can see in my files here, I now have a save file because narrative is successfully saved. Meaning if I pressed escape and then, you know, went to my main menu or whatever, I load it back into it and click gallery. There's our images, ladies and gentlemen. How cool is that? I can come on, I can see that's Carlos's car, that's Nakamura Twins Ride, that's the main player. But if I click on them, you can see I can see the car in all its beauty. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. There is a super basic gallery. There is so much more we can do to it. You can add back buttons here to take you back to the main menu. You can make it so when you have more items, you can actually implement the paging. At the moment, I don't have the correct paging. You could make it so the arrow keys select the correct buttons. There is so much you can do to it. And it's really, really easy to do. So that is my interpretation of a gallery, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think? Will you implement it into your game? What improvements would you make? Would you do something different? Let me know down in the comments below. For now, here is the gallery that I've done. If you would like to see anything more, please let me know below. My name is Decryption, and I will see you next time.